We're going to talk about the history of energy first before we get into this unit, which is going to be dealing strictly with energy and the uses of energy and the transformations of energy. So, as we studied earlier, we're going to start with how energy was used back in the day. And hunter gatherers' main use of energy was what we consider renewable because they use the sun and manpower as their main sources of energy. Then we move on to agriculture society, where the energy shift to what we call potentially renewable. So it's still renewable resource, but because it can be used or abused, it's something to consider possible degradation or loss of, which they switched from manpower to animal power and from solar, let's say, to wood and fire. And then in the industrial society, we did a full-blown switch. We went from renewable to non-renewable resources such as fossil fuels and later on nuclear, which we'll talk about. And they went from manpower to animal power to machines. So big shift. And that's what the focus is of this unit, is non-renewable energy. What I want you to keep in mind is that renewable energy, once it's used, it's no longer able to be reused. That's why they consider it as a source that will run out. We will see it run out in our lifetime if we use what is placed on Earth. And what we consider non-renewable resources are petroleum, nuclear, natural gas, and coal. Petroleum, natural gas, and coal are all fossil fuels, and nuclear is a different source of energy that's not a fossil fuel, but we're going to talk about it in this chapter because it's non-renewable. Does this mean once we use these, we'll never see them on Earth? And the answer is no. Non-renewable means once you use it, it will run out, and it can replenish over a long period of time, but usually not in our lifetime. Keep in mind that 82% of all energy used in the world or consumed in the world is from a non-renewable source, which is pretty sad, considering that we're using something that we know won't be around forever. 76% of that comes from fossil fuels. So out of the 80% that we use our energy, non-renewable, 76% comes from fossil fuels. So let's focus on fossil fuels for the beginning. This unit will be on coal and natural gas once we finish talking about major energy uses. So in the world, the three largest users of energy, number one is China, number two is the USA, and number three is Russia. Actually, number four, surprisingly, is India, but you're required to know the top three. We're going to focus on US a lot, but here's some breakdown of the use. So China is the number one consumer of energy, and 65% of their energy comes from coal use. So they actually are the biggest producer and consumer and importer of coal. Even though the US is number two in energy consumption, they are number one in the use of petroleum. So we are the number one users of petroleum, and we're number two for coal and natural gas. So technically we are one of the highest users. Russia's main use, they're the number three energy users in the world, but their main use of energy, actually like half of their energy use, comes from using natural gas. So in the US, how do we use this energy? 39% is used for electricity production. 27% is used for transportation. 22% is used in the industry, and always remember that in industry we're talking about the manufacturing of goods. And then the rest is used for commercial and residential. So think of ways you use energy in your home that is not tied into electricity production or the making of goods. So maybe the heating of an appliance or that type of thing would be commercial and residential. So let's break down how this fuel is used. We're going to focus in on industry, transportation, and electricity production. So the green bar represents petroleum. And I want you to know that petroleum's main use is for transportation. Petroleum is made to provide fuel for cars, boats, planes. The second use of petroleum is in the making of goods or in the industry. Then we're going to move on to natural gas. natural gas main use is in the industry. And again, I'm talking about industry, transportation, electricity. You do see that natural gas is used highly in the home, and that's because a lot of homes use natural gas for heating, but nothing, something other than electricity. Okay. Main use is industry, and then the second use is electricity production. Very little natural gas is used for transportation. So focus on industry and electricity. And then we've got coal, which its main use is electricity production, and the second use is industry. So as mentioned earlier, industry is definitely a high component of the use of fossil fuels.